Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of DevOps for Everyone. As you can see, I'm joined here by Priyanka, aka Pinky. How you doing?
Good. How are you? I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, it's been really. I've been really looking forward to this. Actually, the company is obviously well known. We're getting to all of that in a moment, but it's good to speak with you. So, where is it you're based? Whereabouts in the
Yeah,
US?
so I'm in Arizona. This is my first talk across the pond. It's pretty
Brilliant.
exciting. Yeah.
Over the moon that you've decided to come on here and do it. So, hopefully, it goes well for you for the first time.
Yeah. Yeah.
No pressure.
Hopefully I'll be back to doing presentations across the pond.
Yeah, no, it'd be good. Do you know what? I think it's we were talking about this yesterday, wasn't we? But I'm sure it's good to keep these things informal because, with the last 2 years of COVID, I feel like Zoom has really put a lot of pressure on to be really formal in these sorts of meetings and meetups, and people kind of don't know what direction they're going in. So to be able to have a chat with the likes of you and about Weaveworks, I think it's a brilliant platform, and StreamYard, obviously. So getting to grips with that now as well. So
Yeah, it's
hopefully it
very
works.
cool.
Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed that StreamYard works for us today. But what I'll do, I'll give you a really quick introduction and then I'll let you correct me wherever I went wrong. So Priyanka, or Pinky, is a developer experience engineer at Weaveworks. She's worked on a multitude of topics, including front-end development, UI automation for testing and API development. Previously, Pinky, she was a software developer at State Farm, where she was on the delivery engineering team working on GitOps enablement. Very instrumental in the multi-tenancy migration to utilize Flux for an internal Kubernetes offering, which we're going to get into a bit more today. Outside of work, I'm told that you enjoy hanging out with your husband and your two rescue dogs, as well as traveling the globe when you get the chance.
Yeah.
What are
That's
your dogs
exactly
called?
right. What am I going to add to that? That was like everything. No,
I know. Did my homework. Let's start with the dogs. What are their names?
So I have two. They're both border collie mixes. Got them as puppies from rescues, and one is Moksha. The older one's Moksha, and then my other one is Samsara.
Wow, very exotic names.
Yeah, they're both Sanskrit.
Brilliant. So two rescue dogs, yeah?
Yeah, they're great. They're incredible. We just went camping actually last weekend with them. Very cold. We went camping. I know it's Arizona, but it was like snowy and very cold. It was an experience for sure.
Yeah. How many times have your dogs jumped on your Zoom calls when you're in a video meeting?
They have one of them. Sometimes she'll stand up. She's there. I kicked them out of this room, so they're not even in here. But sometimes one of them will stand up on my chair and she'll like, yeah. So
Brilliant. I love it. The amount of times that one of my colleagues or my boss's animals has jumped across the screen is hilarious. It never gets old. The kids are the
I like the
funniest.
cats. The cats like just walk on the chair, the table. It's great.
That's exactly it. So, okay, great. I guess if my introduction hit all the points, then we'll just jump straight in. Do you want to introduce yourself and what your role is? And do you want to give us a brief introduction as who Weaveworks are as well?
Yeah. So one thing I did want to mention is that like because I have all that firsthand experience with Flux and GitOps, it was a really cool transition into this role. And so what is Weaveworks first? Weaveworks basically our goal is to make things fast and simple for developers and DevOps teams to build and operate powerful containerized applications. We're really focused on minimizing the complexity of operating workloads in Kubernetes, as well as providing automated continuous delivery pipelines, observability, and monitoring. And so it's kind of where Flux was born from. And then I don't know, like if many people know this, but actually GitOps was a term coined after the creation of Flux based on the existence of Flux. So it was kind of just like a natural growth of like this whole process, which is really cool. And then I think you asked a little bit about what I do as well.
Yeah,
like,
your role, yeah.
Yeah. So it is different. I was also very confused when I first was like, talking to some people about this role, about this developer experience engineer, because I had no idea what it was either.
Yeah.
We didn't really have it at State Farm like in this way, because the difference is that like at State Farm, the customers weren't developers, which is really different. Working for a software company where like the customers are actually other developers is really different and cool and exciting. So basically, I was reading an article about developer experience, and I really liked this one line that I saw in it. And it's basically developer experience is about creating an environment environment in which a developer can do their best work. And I thought that was really cool. So my role is basically to help developers get their best user experience with the tools. It basically involves making sure that they are getting, like, we're getting out like our guides as well written as they can be. Material is, user friendly and readable. And then also actually there's different user groups, right? You have like the cluster operators, the platform engineers, the app developers. So making sure that all those different groups are getting the resources that they need for their tailored experience is really important as well. And it's really cool because, like, me as someone who is actually a user and in that user experience like position, right? It's really neat to be able to relate to what developers would need and actually experience, because I've kind of been through it. So it's kind of cool being in this role.
Is it kind of like a developer advocate?
It's a little bit, yeah. So it is some of that too, because like there is parts of the job that are like relating to our developers internal as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's mostly just making sure that like the tools are the best received and like most understood, getting the word out there, delivering different, talks and making sure people really understand the products, even internally as well. So we do some little trainings internally as well to make sure our own devs know the tools super well too. So it's a lot of that.
So you have to be involved in, and on top of, I guess, a lot of the, well, I suppose externally the marketing material to make sure that people actually understand your product and understand who you are, but also internally as well to make sure that the dev community within the business is actually getting the most out of the tools. So do you have to be an expert on, like the really finite technical detail of what the products do?
I wouldn't say I am. I think I'm getting better, but I mostly am really, really, really close with Flux specifically. But I wouldn't say even that I'm on a finite level. Like I'm still learning Go, so I'm not there on that granular level. But I do talk to people that are in. We have meetings with like the engineers so that we're really like up to date on what's the newest features, what's being worked on. So it's really neat. So I can still talk to things that are like coming out and happening, but I'm not there yet. I need to learn Go more, but yeah.
Fair enough. Don't worry, I'm not about to give you a pop quiz on because I wouldn't be able to. So you're in good company. So before we go on to the demo, which I'm quite looking forward to, before we go on to that, do you want to just tell us a bit about this year for Weaveworks? What's coming up for the business?
Yeah, it's actually a really exciting year. The first thing that we're really, really excited about is that basically from an open source perspective, is getting Flux's application in for CNCF graduation soon. So hopefully Flux is going to graduate really soon. That's really something we're super excited about. And then AWS, Microsoft, VMware, D2IQ, including us at Weaveworks, we all have integrated and adopted Flux into products that actually offer GitOps, which is really exciting for us. And so we're really growing there. And then we actually have a new controller that's in the works as well. It's the Terraform controller. And this is a really exciting new addition to Flux because it's been asked for. People really want to, get Terraform integrated too.
By popular demand.
yeah. It's something that's been asked for a while. So we're really excited about that one. And then recently, we actually, I think like earlier this month, we announced that we merged with Magalix.
Yeah.
Which is a company that basically helps you secure your deployment process. And so with that in mind, this year is going to have a lot of focus on more policy as code and trusted delivery. Basically, we're going to be enabling more security features into Flux and GitOps. And then also we have some new features going into our enterprise offering, including better dev platform support through profiles, which is really exciting. And basically this year is just going to be a lot of making the GitOps process more refined and streamlined for the developers. So it's a really exciting year. Lots going on.
And a lot more secure as well, yeah.
Yeah, that's really exciting. That merger was a very exciting announcement for us, yeah.
Do you know what? I can see the rise of the DevSecOps vacancy this year going through the roof. So, obviously we've got DevOps, you've got so many different acronyms, but DevSecOps in particular this year, I think from a recruiter perspective is going to be the most in-demand skill by far this year.
So that's why I think it was a really good move too. Yeah, for sure. It's going to be good to have like those security options available to our customers as well. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, if you've got the the right standards, the policies in place, and if you've got the right stamp of honor on your website or on your social media, it just makes you so much more credible as well.
For sure.
Absolutely. Great. Okay. Well, thank you for that introduction. And what I'll do in the show notes as well, I'll post your LinkedIn and your Twitter handle for people to be able to come and bombard you with questions. Is that all right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Perfect. So what I'm going to do is I'll share your screen and we're going to go on to the intro to GitOps and intro to Flux demos.
Yep.
Perfect. So that should be on there right now.
Cool. Okay, so I just basically I'm going to give like a short overview of what GitOps is, and then I'm going to go into like what Flux is a little bit, and then I will show a little demo actually of bootstrapping Flux. So basically setting up Flux for the first time using our Flux CLI. So what is GitOps? GitOps is an operating model for cloud native applications such as Kubernetes, but I do want to highlight that it's not just for Kubernetes. If you are doing a multi-cloud infrastructure, you can still use GitOps, but basically since we're going to be focusing on Flux, we will be talking about Kubernetes. But I do want to mention that like in my past experience at State Farm, we did have a multi-cloud infra, and we did set up GitOps for 3 different platforms. So it is possible. And then also GitOps utilizes a version controlled system, most commonly Git, but there are exceptions to that. But basically it uses Git as the single source of truth. And what that is, you know, audit trail. Basically there's a history that you can see where changes were made and approved. And yeah, you can always see those changes. And also it enables continuous delivery through automated deployment, monitoring, and management by a version controlled system. It's very important to have a version controlled system because you can do rollbacks, you can make fixes very quickly and stuff like that. So lastly, it also manages your infrastructure and applications declaratively. That one is super important, and I will hit on it a little bit more in a second, but that's a very important statement that I will come back to. And then why even bother with GitOps? What's the big deal about it? It's basically individuals, teams, and organizations who implement GitOps. They experience many benefits, including stronger security guarantees. And because GitOps's tools unique ability to treat everything as code, it creates a direct impact on security. For example, if all configuration and security policy is treated as code, then everything can be held in version control. So basically any and all changes that are made have been reviewed and they're inputted into an automated pipeline. There's no manual processes, so there's less likely for something to go wrong. You're less likely to be at work on a weekend trying to fix some random phantom bug. And that goes into the second point, which is increased developer and operational productivity. Because there's less manual processes, developers can focus on things that really matter, such as the code and the application and making it better for the user. And then it also enhances developer experience because it's less likely to be there on the weekend, and there's less likely to be like random manual processes that failed. And then because of all the automation and the codification, it improves the stability. There's a higher reliability. It's more consistent and standardized as well. So I just want to run through some GitOps principles. Basically, these are some guidelines that have been put into a list based on discussions with different vendors and user experiences by the GitOps working group. And you can find out more about them at opengitops.dev. But basically, this is just a set of best practices. Don't feel like you have to have all of them done in order to use GitOps. Everyone's journey really is different with GitOps. And, you can add in hardening and tweak your setup later to meet these guidelines as you go, but you can get started. So the first statement is that a system managed by GitOps must have its desired state expressed declaratively. So basically, this is what I was saying I would come back to. So basically, your desired state should be written in code. And there's a lot of benefits that come with that just in and of itself. You can, it's more reusable. There's an audit trail. Also, you can go back and see like exactly what it should look like. It's all just there. You don't have to run like cube control commands or anything like that to see what, is out in production. And then the second thing is that desired state is stored in a way that enforces immutability, versioning, and retains a complete version history. So there's no sneaking in a change here. You want to make sure that there's no bad actors that can come in and just change something without it being in that audit trail, so to speak. Mm-hmm. So that's super important as well. And then software agents automatically pull the desired state declarations from the source. And so basically this means that there's something that is looking and seeing for a change and then actually applying it. And this goes into the fourth one, which is software agents continuously observe actual system state and attempt to apply the desired state. So this is important because this means something like Flux, which we'll get to in a second, but it's basically continuously listening for your desired state and then making sure to actually apply those changes itself, which is really neat. And then, so now we can get into what Flux is. Flux is basically a Git-centric package manager for your applications. But like I said, Git isn't really the only system that it works with. I will get to that later too. But it provides a set of continuous and progressive delivery solutions for Kubernetes. It's really created with Kubernetes in mind. So it's very naturally a good extension of the benefits of Kubernetes. And then basically at its very core, it continuously monitors your version control system, and it actually applies the desired state that's been declaratively stated there. And the nice part of this is that you don't have to worry about something like configuration drift, because it actually hard applies on a schedule as well. So if for some reason things have gotten out of sync, say a bad actor came in and changed something, it will actually set it back to what has been codified and is set as your desired state, which is really cool. And then, as I mentioned earlier, Flux really reduces developer burden because it removes the need for manual deployment processes, which actually goes into the benefits of Flux. And so the first one is that it reduces developer burden. It removes the kube control problem. You don't have to worry about what kube control versions you are on to be able to interact with the cluster. And so it's just so fully automated that, you can focus on things that really matter. And then it's also extensible. It's super versatile. It works with existing tools. It's really flexible and modular. And like I said, it's a natural extension of Kubernetes. So it's also very extendable because it's developed using a microservice architecture. You can pick and choose basically what you want and tailor your own experience. So there's options with it, which is really neat. And then it also comes with out-of-the-box support for Customize and Helm, which is really cool. And like I said, it's designed completely for Kubernetes. So a lot of the tooling and everything is already totally works with probably the tools that you're already using, which is really neat. And then, did you have something? Sorry. Okay, I'll keep going. So then there's also this little snippet that we have on our webpage that I just wanted to run through. And we call it Flux in short. And it's just these little tidbits that we like to highlight that kind of give you like a brief overview of Flux. The first one is that Flux provides GitOps for both apps and infrastructure. Basically, Flux, and then you can also add on Flagger. And you can, using Flagger as well, you can actually deploy apps with canaries, feature flags, A/B rollouts. Flux can actually also manage any Kubernetes resource. And the infrastructure and workload dependency management is built in. Using a feature called depends on, you can actually tell it, let's say you have an application that requires a database to already be stood up. You can say that the application depends on the database. So that'll make sure that the database is up and running before your application is stood up, which is really a neat feature as well. And then really just push to Git and Flux does the rest. Flux enables application deployment and along with progressive delivery, like I said, with the help of Flagger through automatic reconciliation. And Flux can actually even push back to Git for you with automated container image updates to Git. So image scanning and patching, which is a cool feature. And it really just works with your existing tools. It works with your Git providers, GitHub, GitLab, Bitbucket. And then, as I mentioned, there's one other one. It's the S3 compatible buckets as a source too. So it doesn't have to be Git. And it also works with all major container registries and all CI workflow providers, which is neat. So basically anything that your team is already probably using. And then Flux works with any Kubernetes and all Kubernetes tooling. All common Kubernetes tooling. And so basically Customize, Helm, RBAC, and policy-driven validation, it works with all of those. So it really just simply is like it falls in place. You just kind of drop it in, which is really neat. And then also Flux does multi-tenancy and what we like to say multi-everything. It's basically, because there's two things here too, like there's soft tenancy and hard tenancy as well. And it can do both, which is really cool. So it can do the situation where, in your cluster, each team gets a namespace. It can do that, but it can also do like multi-cluster as well. And then it also provides, it does alerts and notifies, which is really cool. It provides health assessments. So it can actually alert to external systems and external event handling. You just do Git push and you can get notified on Slack and other chat systems, which is really cool. And Flux is actually a CNCF incubating project and was categorized as Adopt on the CNCF CI/CD Tech Radar alongside only Helm. So only those two were in that category, which is really cool. So users really trust Flux. And like I mentioned earlier, with all those other companies that are inputting it, like you can really see that it's a trustworthy product. It does exactly what it claims it does, and it's great. So also, we welcome contributors of any kind. The components of Flux are on Kubernetes core controller runtime. So anyone can contribute, and its functionality can be extended very easily. Even if you're like, we're very beginner friendly as well. So even if you're new to the whole topic and like all that, and you just want to get started contributing, there are issues out there that you can definitely grab, which is cool. So
do you guys have a community Slack channel?
We do, but I will get to it in a second. We do have one.
I'm ruining the presentation.
It's on like 2 slides down. But yes, it's there. So basically, Flux, like I said, it's a microservice architecture. So it's a set of Kubernetes controllers. And if you're not familiar with Kubernetes controllers, a controller basically handles the lifecycle of objects within Kubernetes. So basically what should be done when the object is created, updated, deleted, whatever. And so we have this set of them, and I'm going to go into a little detail on them. But basically, the source controller, it fetches resources and stores them as artifacts. So at its simplest form, it's basically just listening to the Git repo you told it to listen to, and it will just pull in those artifacts and store them. So any change that's made up there, it'll just store them in, and then the customized controller comes along, and it actually applies those manifests. It runs manifest generation using customized behind the scenes. So and so one thing I just want to mention there is that you can still use your own customized files. But if you don't, the customized controller is basically just doing it in the backend. So that's what's happening there. And then the Helm controller does a deployment of Helm charts. So if you're using Helm, this is like a great tool to use as well. You can naturally just start using it. And then the notification controller does the notification dispatch I mentioned earlier, where it can notify you in Slack or whatever you're using. And then these image controllers, so the image reflector controller basically reflects image metadata for the automation controller, which then updates the YAML when new container images are available. So basically they work together to update a Git repository when there's a new container image available, which is really cool. So basically all these controllers work together to produce an outcome, which is really neat. You can kind of see that in the previous slide. And then here, so yeah, get started with GitOps. You can, like you mentioned, on the CNCF Slack, we actually have a #Flux channel, so you can join that to communicate with us. We do have a mailing list that you can join for updates and stuff like that. And then we have a getting started guide, and our docs are on fluxcd.io/docs. So yeah.
Perfect. So just before you go to the demo, one thing that you mentioned there is that you've got a pretty cool community. It's user friendly. User feedback's been good. So can you give us an idea to the size of the user base so far and the size of the community?
Oh gosh, I wish I had these numbers. I can't.
Sorry, I'm throwing it on you there.
I don't know if I know numbers. I should have. Yeah. It's a big community for sure. I'm not sure. I should know this.
I mean, anything that's affiliated through CNCF anyway, and if it's in there as one of two options, like you said, it's only next to what, Helm? Did you say?
Yeah, it's listed in that category as next to Helm as Adopt, which is really cool. So it is currently an incubating project, like I said, but also we're working on graduating this year, so we're hoping to go to that next level.
I was going to say, are you guys using any big meetups that are affiliated with the CNCF? Obviously, you've got KubeCon as the big one.
Yeah, so we have actually, well, it's not ours, but there is a GitOps con at KubeCon, which is really cool. So there's like a side event. We did, I think last year was the first year we did it. And that's actually the funny thing is like, that's where I met my new team in person, which is really funny. Right. And so that is, I presented actually at GitOps con last year. And so, yeah, that's something that'll happen again. The EU one has one too. And then it's probably going to be a side event that happens every year. It was actually, interestingly, the most popular side event at KubeCon last year, which is really cool. Yeah.
Really? And you were speaking?
Yeah, it's very exciting. Really cool.
And then Weaveworks came along and poached you.
Yeah, exactly.
Brilliant. Cool.
Yeah. So, and then we specifically have our meetup ourselves too. We have the Weaveworks meetups that we do. And, you know, there is something that we have called GitOps as well, which is a really neat tool to use if you're not, if like, let's say you don't have a lot of time to get started with Bootstrap. It can be very, you know, difficult to get started with. Like, it can be a little bit more opinionated. Like, you can actually make more decisions and tailor the experience, right? But with GitOps, it's really neat because you can just get up and running with GitOps very quickly. So we do have I think it's a weekly workshop as well of GitOps. So if that's something anyone's interested in, you can check that out on our Weaveworks meetup page.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Okay,
I'll let you get on with the demo now.
Okay, let me close this, and then I will open this. Okay, cool. So I'm going to get started with this. Okay. So basically, first thing is Flux Bootstrap is more like, if you want to get into the weeds, it's more customizable. It's fairly unopinionated, so you can like tailor it to yourself. And then basically, I want to mention, so this is actually utilizing the Flux CLI. So I already have a kind cluster stood up that I'm going to be using to deploy to, but Flux CLI is a really neat CLI. You can brew install it as well. And it's really, really user-friendly. It's probably one of my favorite CLIs I've ever used as a user because it's so well documented within it. So like I'm going to show here. So Flux Bootstrap GitHub-help. And you can see here that it's super user-friendly in the sense of like the first thing you get is this little snippet on the top of like what this command is actually going to do. And in this case, it's going to create a GitHub repository if it doesn't exist. And then it'll commit all the toolkit components back to the main branch of that repository. And then it actually will target itself to synchronize with itself. So it's actually going to like target itself to reconcile that repository that it creates. And the really cool feature here too is that if the toolkit components are already like present in the cluster, it actually will perform an upgrade if you keep running Bootstrap. So the neat thing in here is that like if you want to be on the latest and greatest version of Flux, you can just run a Bootstrap again, and it'll actually update all the images and stuff for the controllers to the latest version. And it does that without disrupting anything, which is really, really neat. So that's a really cool feature that I like to mention. And then it also has all these really cool examples. It tells you like, if you want it this way, do it this way, which is really cool. So you just have to copy and paste it, tailor it a little bit. And then it also mentions all the flags. So I'm a big fan of the CLI. And this is not just for the Bootstrap. You can do this for any subcommand within the Flux CLI. So that's really cool. So like if you're trying to create a source, you can do a Flux source, get help. And it's just very user-friendly, which I really like. And then so then we are going to actually be running our own Bootstrap command to get all these components set up within this this cluster that we just created, the kind cluster. And what we're going to do is we're going to bootstrap into a repository that doesn't already exist called Flux-Demo. And we're telling it specifically to make like a private repository here. And we're saying to this -- path equals clusters part, we're telling it to only reconcile on things that are in that clusters folder. So only apply things that are within that folder. Don't worry about anything else in that repo. And so as you can see here, we're going to see some pods that are getting stood up based on this Bootstrap. And as you can see, it is standing those up. And one thing I want to mention here is that it actually also creates a deploy key for you. And then it actually, so that's how it's listening to that private repo that's just created. It's actually creating a deploy key that it's setting up for itself, which is really cool. And then as you can see here, there's a couple of controllers that I mentioned earlier missing. And it's those image automation controllers. So basically one thing to note is that when you run a Bootstrap, it doesn't come with those image automation controllers already installed. You can rerun the Bootstrap command though with a flag, and basically it'll pull in those controllers as well for you. So now you can see here that it has created this Flux Demo repo 36 seconds ago. And then basically if you look in here, it created these 3 files. There's this GOTK components YAML. So this created that Flux system namespace. The Flux system namespace is basically where all those components live, all those controllers are installed. There's these custom resource definitions that are required for the deployment. And then in here, you'll also find all of those specific components, like the deployments for all those controllers. Everything that is necessary for the Flux gears to work is in that components.yaml. And then in here, in this GOTK sync.yaml, we actually have 2 things. The first one is this Git repository source at the top. And what this is doing is it's actually telling the source controller to, hey, go listen to this URL on line 14, which is that Flux demo. So it's pointing to itself, this new repo that was created. And it's telling it, hey, in this Flux demo repo, you see this interval that says 1 minute right here. And it's telling it every minute to go check this Flux demo repo for any changes and pull in those artifacts. So that's what that's doing. And then this customization is telling the customization controller to actually go listen to this source. So it's now telling it to listen to the source that was just created, this Git repository Flux system source. And it's telling it to listen specifically on the path./clusters. So only apply, like we just did in the Bootstrap, right? We told it to only listen to the clusters folder. And it's basically saying on a 10-minute interval, do a hard apply of all those artifacts that are pulled in by the source controller in that folder specifically. So that's what's happening in here. So yeah, every 1 minute it's pulling in the artifacts, and then every 10 minutes it's actually pulling in the, it's actually applying those artifacts. So, which is cool because if you do have configuration drift, every 10 minutes it'll just hard apply it back to what's supposed to be in the desired state. So that's what that does. So now we are going to show some commands basically to see how to see the sources that were stood up, to actually find them. And the first one is actually a kube control command. So there's 2 ways to do it. You could do it through kube control, but you could also do it through the Flux CLI. So this way, I just wanted to show you first. It will actually show you the URL as well. So it shows you the URL that the source is actually listening to. In this case, the Flux demo repo, right? But you can also do Flux get source git, and then you can do -a, which is just saying all regardless of the namespace. The difference is here you don't get the URL, but it does show you like, oh, is there any errors? For some reason, was the source not able to pull, anything like that. So there are those 2 options. And then now we are going to actually, add a change into that repo, into the Flux demo repo. So we're going to clone it real fast. And then we're going to add a directory called default within that clusters folder. So in the folder that the customization is applying, we're going to add a default folder, and then we're going to add a little deployment.yaml file in there, which is just a simple deployment, a front-end deployment that just to show you that like the pod is actually being stood up. So once we clone that, we'll create the folder for the default folder. And then one thing to note is that we did see that the interval was set to 10 minutes. So in that case, you might not want to wait the full 10 minutes once this is actually pushed to the repo. So there is like a way to reconcile as well, but I will get to that in a second too. But so basically here we have this new default folder within our clusters folder, and then we'll add that file. So I already have this file. I'm just going to copy it into this folder, and then we'll push it. We'll give it a second. Sorry, I must have had a second hard time getting that command. And so once we do this, we'll actually push this change to Git. So this is actually going to be in that Flux demo repo, but keep in mind you can add obviously your own config repo and then set up a source within the Flux demo repo, and then it'll basically be listening to another repo. And we do have demos like that as well, so be sure to check those out. I think I actually just recently did a demo on the CNCF webinars. So if you're interested in like a little bit more in-depth demo with that actually setting up a source to a different repo, check it out there. I don't know if it goes live yet. I think it goes live this week, so it'll be there at some point. But yeah.
Breaking news.
Yeah, and there's actually a really good one going out there too on Helm. My team member, Scott, did that one. So, okay. So as you can see here, what happened is it actually got there before I even got to it, which is funny. So I must have hit that 10-minute interval. And it had already stood up those pods without me reconciling it, which is really a funny coincidence. But basically, if that hadn't have happened, I could run this Flux reconcile source git Flux system. And what that's doing is it's just going to pull in the source. So it's not actually going to apply it yet. But it'll just pull in the source artifacts if there's been a change. But there is a way to actually get it to do both. And I really like this command and I like pointing it out. You can do Flux reconcile customization Flux system -- with source. And this actually will do the source reconciliation first and then directly after actually do the customization reconciliation. So it'll actually apply all the latest changes, which is a really cool command. So as you can see, that pod is up and running. So yeah, I guess Flux already had picked it up, but that's just a neat thing I wanted to show. And then the last thing I want to show is that let's say you, for some reason, something has gone wrong and you know that the code has a bug in it and you don't want it to go out. You don't want customization to actually happen. So what you can do is you can actually suspend the customization, and while it's suspended, it will actually not be applying any changes. And so this is like a good way of getting changes out without breaking your users. And so you can see now that suspended is true. And while that's there, no changes will actually be applied. The source will still be pulling in the artifacts, but nothing will be applied. So it's like a very simple way of doing this. And then you can just say Flux resume customization, and it will actually then resume applying any of those changes. And so you can see it's already waiting for the customization reconciliation. So yeah, now you can see it's suspended as false. So that's a neat trick for if you have any, like if you're kind of stressed out about not getting a change out there, that's like the way to do that. But yeah, that's all I wanted to show. It's a brief synopsis of like the Flux CLI and how to get started with Flux. There's a lot of features obviously that you can do. You can add sources, customizations. There's like a ton of features with the CLI, but that's the basics.
Perfect. Great. Thank you very much. That's really informative. I'm sure there's going to be a few people that are messaging you or getting in touch with you after this when they see the recording. There is a chat box on the right-hand side. I'm not sure how the YouTube layout is for people watching, but if there's any questions, then put them in the chat box. In terms of, just to go back to a question, just to follow on from your demo as well. I know you said what's coming up for the company this year, but what about you personally in your role? And then obviously, with Flux and everything like that, what's coming up for you this year?
Yeah, so I've actually only been here for a few months, but basically so far I've already been doing a few presentations. And then I actually am giving a talk at Open Source 101. It's a little conference that is in March. I wish I knew the date, but I don't. And so basically I'm giving a talk there about Flux as well. So a lot more of these talks, a lot of helping out with the docs, just trying to make the user experience better, basically in any way that I can, try to get user engagement and stuff like that. So.
And I'm assuming that the company's hiring, the company's growing, bringing in new devs. So what's your process of bringing somebody in and getting them up to speed on this? Is it just the same as if it was an existing colleague employee getting them up to speed?
Yeah, mine's a little weird. I think mine might be like a very different kind of case because we had already kind of, worked with them from State Farm. They did a little workshop with us, which is really cool. That's something we do offer too. If you are doing multi-tenancy and you're on like say Flux One, we offer migration workshops as well to help users get started with that. You just have to reach out to us. And so that's how I met them. And kind of went from there. Like I said, my experience, I met them at KubeCon, was talking a bit to them there. And then just did some really informal interviews. The interview process is very simple. And then the onboarding process for me was really easy because I already knew the tool. I've been using Flux for a while. So for me as a user, it wasn't too difficult to switch over. And like I said, I've been doing talks on GitOps even when I was at State Farm. So that wasn't a super weird transition for me. But I think what I really like about it is that everyone at Weaveworks is so friendly. And even if they're in a different role, like they're just so nice and they just want to hear your opinions. And it's a really welcoming environment. So I have had no issues getting, up to speed with the company and everything like that. I've had a great time here. Yeah.
Brilliant. So you mentioned you got another meetup coming up in March. Are you hoping to do any in-person events soon?
I hope so. We did some stuff for KubeCon. We'll see. Maybe they'll send me to Europe. I don't know.
In Spain, isn't it?
Huh? Yeah, it's Valencia. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's
actually funny. I was just there in December. So That'll be funny if I do get sent back.
More pleasure than business in
Yeah,
December.
yeah, that one was a trip. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but
Nice.
yeah, I'm hoping so. I know like some things are starting to get back into person. I did, like I said, I did go to KubeCon last year in person, which was really exciting. Presented at GitOps so that was really cool to be back in person. It was like smaller. You could tell it was still, people were still unsure, but yeah, I have hope that this year is going to be, more in-person stuff.
Oh yeah, me too. But it's a weird one though, because I'm based over here in the UK. So if I want to try and do UK-based meetups, in-person meetups, wouldn't be having a chance to chat with yourself and other people.
True. Yeah. There's such a weird thing because like you can reach more of an audience this way. It's different for sure. Yeah. I maybe a mix. I think a mix would be cool. Like a hybrid, and like that's actually what KubeCon was actually last year. It was a hybrid thing where people could still join virtually, presenters could present virtually. And so I think that's like the best of both worlds, because then maybe people that can't travel, maybe what
I'll do is I'll get a live audience in my London office, central London, and then get you up on a big screen and then give another demo.
And there'll be like laugh tracks and
yeah, exactly. Yeah, we'll get it all going. We'll get 8 o'clock for you, but 4 o'clock for us.
It's true. Yeah.
This has been excellent. I really appreciate you doing this. So, final thing from me: where can everybody find you? How is best to get hold of you?
I guess on LinkedIn, maybe. Yeah, on LinkedIn is probably the best way to get a hold of me. I don't really check Twitter very often as much as I should, but I check LinkedIn. So if you do want to get a hold of me, catch me there. So.
I find Twitter a bit like a minefield, just like a rabbit hole. You go down one thing and then you're lost for hours.
Yeah, I can't. I need to get into it, but I'm not there. Yeah, I'm learning.
You and me both. And the Weaveworks website, what's the link?
Yeah, so that is, it's just weave.works.
Weave.works. And I'll make sure that's in the show notes for everybody else as well. Perfect. Well, Pinky, that's everything from me. I found this really informative. I'm sure, and I'm hoping that you're going to get some feedback from this as well. But I'd love having you on today. So I appreciate you jumping on at like 9 o'clock for you.
Yeah, it's like about to be 10. Yeah. But thank you. This has been so fun. This is awesome.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed it. Well, enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll catch up with you offline.
Thanks. Have a good evening.
All the best. Bye.